So my name's Brock Champlin. As Danny said, or as the introduction said, I'm an HR supervisor with 3M Health Information Systems, which is located in Murray. I've been at that location for a little over a month. I've worked for 3M for the last 3 years. I started in St. Paul as a global leadership development specialist, and I had the responsibility of managing the supervisor development program on a global scale. I am a Utah State alum. I got my master's in human resources and my MBA here. I had the luxury of sitting in that building and watching this building being built the entire time I was in school, and then graduated and left, and then they opened it. So it's really nice to be here, to actually see it and see where you guys are able to go to school. I got my job at 3M through an internship. 3M, at the time that I was in grad school, did not recruit from Utah State, so I actually went to the NSHIMBA conference, so the National Society of Hispanic MBAs, because I look Hispanic, and met them, and they basically gave me the good old line of just apply online. And so that's what I did, and I happened to get the internship, and then they gave me a full-time offer, so I've been there ever since.
Great. Emily.
I'm Emily Buckley. I own and run Cache Valley Family Magazine here in town. That was a position I kind of created for myself, right? I started the business 4 years ago. I had left Cache Valley for about 8 years. We lived in Sarasota, Florida. And when we returned, I felt like this was a resource that was missing in our community. I had the experience working with a lot of other publications and things, so I just decided to go for it. It was at a point in my career where I could either, apply and find some new career opportunities or build something for myself, and so I went forward with that, and it's been a great experience ever since then. I'm also a Utah State graduate, but I'm feeling like the old one now after hearing their introductions. I don't even think this building was dreamed of when I graduated. So,
Well, thank you. So we asked these guys to come because they speak from a variety of different industries, different positions, startup to in the middle of growing one to a corporation. So hopefully they can help shed some light on how to manage people and how to manage projects and their experience with that. So speaking to the people side first, so as young professionals, there's a lot of times when you could manage or supervise people who are older than you, those who may have more experience than you. So what have you found helpful in balancing that dynamic and maintaining that mutual respect through those relationships? And any one of you can take it.
Well, as the HR guy, I'll take it, or at least start. So for me, one of the things that I've learned is even if you are managing somebody that is older than you, you're definitely not the smartest person in the room. And I've found that especially at 3M. 3M's filled with PhDs, filled with people that have spent an entire career at that company. And working with them, I had to learn that, one, I'm not the smartest one in the room, and so I needed to leverage their intelligence, leverage their ability to get things done. My role was really as a facilitator, not necessarily as a manager. And by building rapport with them and by focusing on what the goals they had, what their challenges were, what the outcomes they wanted to be were, and then helping them to meet those challenges or overcome those challenges, meet their goals, that's what I found was the easiest way to manage those that at the time may look down on you because you're younger or that feel like they should be in charge because they are older. But you give them the credit, you give them the opportunity to really take charge and to do those things that they are best at. And then you just make sure everything stays within the parameters of whatever the project or responsibility is.
I can maybe just add to that. I'm glad to hear Brock take stabs at those. In fact, I'm looking forward to hearing Emily and Brock talk a lot. I actually brought even a notebook here so I can learn. But this will be on a video after, right? So maybe
yes,
I can
you can learn after.
I got bad handwriting anyway. So, it's a difficult. I think it's a good question. I think it can be a tricky scenario. Perhaps my first piece of advice would be to throw out all assumptions, to not assume anything, which can be easy in that scenario. If you're a younger person, maybe managing or leading an employee or a team of employees who are perhaps older or more experienced, maybe off the bat, just don't assume that they resent you because you're young. Give them the benefit of the doubt. Likewise, don't assume they're not going to be any less effective at their job because of their age. And in the question that Danny read, the word was respect. And I think bringing a mutually or healthy level of respect to the table will hopefully break down any barriers you have or any awkwardness or difficulty when it comes to you being in that position. I know that at MyEducator, we try and just create a free and open culture. And I think the answer to that question really depends on what type of culture or atmosphere permeates within your organization. We're a little smaller, so it's maybe easier for us, but we invite all employees of any age level, any experience level to know that their suggestions are not only welcome, but frankly encouraged. And if they have good ideas, to bring those to the table, regardless of their age or anything like that. In fact, I'm thinking of one scenario in particular just this past week during a Slack conversation in our company. It was one of our developers who said, here's a great idea to recruit new authors, something I had never considered, no one else had ever considered, and something we'll probably move forward with doing as a strategy. And so I think creating that culture is important because no one feels like their opinion is discounted. And if you are a leader or a manager in an organization, you'll quickly find out that the opinions and perspectives of your colleagues and coworkers, they matter a great deal. And it behooves you as a manager to listen because you want to make the most informed decision possible if that is your decision. Now, at MyEducator, we have much more of a collaborative decision-making process, but I know that when decisions need to be made, we try and take inventory of everyone because they're in those positions for a reason and their opinions matter.
Great.
I would echo the same thoughts that you have, especially about the mutual respect. But I think, especially in my business, where most of the success of my company is on networking and building relationships, there is a lot to learn. The very first salesperson I hired from my magazine was 70 years old, but he had sold cars in this valley for 30 years. He had those connections, and he could walk in and he had this, he could shake their hand, they knew him, they trusted him, they could work with him. And so I think there's a lot to do. They have communication, the text messaging generation and the email generation. It serves us very well in a lot of ways, but that communication that we can learn from maybe some older people has been very beneficial for us.
Great. So that's kind of the people side, and I know you've got people, you've got projects, and you've got everything in between. So shifting to the project side, can all of you, one of you, tell us about a time when you had a significant challenge in a project. How did you kind of overcome that, and what did you do taking that forward with your other projects to ensure that you could do the same thing?
I actually want to ask Emily, because we just on our way up, she was talking about how she founded this magazine while she was raising a family, and so maybe just the challenges that presented for you and how your time management skills were put to work, because I think that we'd all be beneficial to hear kind of how you manage that and still manage to run a successful magazine.
So my magazine goes out 5 times a year. So this big project comes up 5 times a year, and it's as soon as one gets finished, it's time to start another one. And for me, time management is a huge one. Another thing is I often hear, I have a sister who uses the phrase, work smart, not hard. I hate it. I hate that phrase. I think you have to work smart and work hard. And I think it's a real disservice for ourselves, and especially for, I feel like, a lot of recent college graduates. As I've interviewed them and tried to work with a few, we've had some successes and some not. But I think it's a real disservice to believe that you can work smart and not work hard. They've got to go hand in hand. And so for me, as I started this business, it was time management and working hard. I had a lot of years of experience, and I had to employ every bit of knowledge I had in there and work hard and figure out exactly how to get through every little bit of it. I say I'm the best at fighting the fire in front of me and then working as we get through the end. But then finding good people to work with and trusting them to be able to do their job and not have to be micromanaged. I always like to think, inspect what I expect. So give them really clear expectations and be prepared to go back and inspect it, but to let them roll with it as well. And they are really capable of doing really good things.
For me, I like the way you said work smart and work hard. When I was here as a student, one of the phrases that I heard a lot from one of our professors here was, we're getting a white-collar education, but we have a blue-collar work ethic, which essentially means we work really hard, but we're smart about it. And I feel like that helped a lot when I got into my new role. So my first role at 3M. So when I started at 3M, they put me in charge of a program that was essentially on its way out the door. It was the current leadership development program, and they knew that they wanted to change it. So basically, I was kind of there just to keep the heart beating until they decided to change it over. Well, then I found out that I was going to be then responsible for changing this program. And for me, and working in this company, so 3M is in over 90 countries, and we had to develop a program that was applicable in all countries. So for me, the biggest challenge was, one, understanding our managers' issues that they had throughout the world, and then working with the stakeholders in each of those countries in order to be able to build the rapport that we needed to implement this brand new program. Because in the past, they were able to do their own thing. In each location, they could do their own thing, but we were changing the whole dynamic where everybody was going to be running the same program. So for me, managing this project, it took first building a really good team. And so having a team around me that I was able to rely on, that had the same desire and the same goal as me, and then working with the stakeholders. One of the things that was the most important, and one of the biggest things that I've learned in my time at 3M, is it's really important to get buy-in from the stakeholders. So those that really are going to either implement or have control over what happens in their area. And so we had countless calls with people all over the world. I had really early morning calls so that we could hit up West Europe and Eastern Europe. We had really late calls so we could hit up China. And we did those so they aligned with their schedule and not with our schedule, showing them that, hey, we really want to work with you and we aren't just telling you what to do. And by doing that, it helped build that rapport that we needed. So we were able to roll out the program globally with only a few hiccups, and it was a lot better than we had originally expected, but that's because we had worked with each of the stakeholders and built that rapport and helped had them alongside us the whole time during the development, so they knew what they were getting.
I couldn't agree more with what Emily and Brock just said. Emily's emphasis on having good people, and then Brock actually talking about stakeholders. That's actually what I had thought about and prepared in preparation for this question. The scenario or the situation that came to my mind, if you're thinking about a challenging situation, actually had to do with a particular school that we wanted to partner with. So MyEducator, we try and reach out to schools and partner with them so they use our content, not only schools but corporations. And this particular school had pretty specific pedagogical or instructional design requirements. They were saying courses need to be like this, and content needs to look like this, so the user experience is like this. And we're all very excited to throw our weight behind it and to meet their request. But one of the things that I learned was, one of the things that Brock mentioned is, okay, how does this affect everyone involved, all the parties involved? And if you're a manager or a leader, you just need to consider what the ripple effect is of accommodating one particular party or stakeholder group. And what I mean by that is, when we go to this school and try and accommodate a request, we also need to go back to our authors and say, you need to provide the content in A, B, C, D form. We need to go to our developers and say, you need to build a feature that meets A, B, C, D. And then we also need to consider the students. And hopefully what the school has in mind aligns well with the end user experience. But in our industry, you'd be surprised. Sometimes what's important for a professor or a school isn't necessarily the first thing the student says is important for her or him. And so thankfully in this situation, we were able to, I think, create a mutually beneficial scenario for all parties involved. But it was only after we communicated with each one of these parties and ran the scenario through them to get their input and their buy-in before really moving forward. And thankfully we were able to create a scenario where we met the needs of this school, had our authors on board with producing the content, and I think produced courses that the end users are happy with. But it required essentially an awareness of all the people in play and what the ramifications are of a decision that you make that affects all stakeholders.
Great. So, whether you're managing opinions or whether you're managing your time, there's some sort of leadership aspect in what all of you do. So speak to us a little bit about leadership. So what do you define as leadership, and what do you think is a characteristic that all leaders should possess?
I feel like after teaching leadership development for a while, I probably should tackle this thing. So for me, what is a great leader? When we think about that, a lot of the time you can think about great leaders in your own life and you can identify those leaders, but sometimes it's hard to identify why they're so great. For me, I view leadership and somebody that's a true leader as somebody that's able to see those that they interact with, see those that they work with, and see the potential that they can meet. So for me, if I'm looking at somebody, I look at them and look at them, what they could become and what they have the capabilities of becoming. And then as a leader, it is my responsibility to help them see that vision themselves. And once they see that vision, provide them with the tools and the resources that they need so that they can achieve that vision. Leadership, you don't have to be a manager. You don't have to be in like the hierarchical way in charge of people. It's in your interactions with everybody. So seeing people with the capabilities that they have and giving them the opportunities to achieve their goals, overcome their trials, their challenges. For me, one of the most important characteristics that a leader can have, there's actually a couple. So one is humility. Knowing that you aren't necessarily the smartest person in the room and relying on those that you're working with to use their own intelligence. The other is a term coined by a company actually just south of here, and that's you need to have an outward mindset. You need to interact with people with a very clear view of their goals and their challenges, the opportunities that they have, and realize that you are there to help them achieve those things. They're not there for you, you're there for them. It's this outward look on people and how you can help them achieve their goals, and I think that's what is one of the true characteristics that makes a great leader.
Anyone want to add to that?
I don't have a lot to add. You had a lot of the same thoughts that I had. I would just say what I had thought of as a job title doesn't make you a leader. You can be the CEO and not be much of a leader. A leader is a builder, and that's what I was going to say. From an outside perspective rather than from a leader's perspective, when I think about the good leaders that I've been affected by, they're the ones who saw my potential and built me, and they were happy to see me move on and do great things.
And I echo the sentiments already stated. I actually even asked one of my colleagues, his name's Brad Gessel, who's just a human dynamo. He's an excellent guy and original employee at MyEducator, what his definition of leadership was. And he had just a very simple definition that I liked a lot. It's, helping people achieve a common goal, and which I think is simple and to the point. I would just add to that, a leader is someone that you feel, or you have trust, or like you have their trust and faith. I think of the people that I would follow, and I trust them, or I have confidence in their decision-making skills. And to maybe get more detail, what those characteristics are exactly, I thought, well, why? Why would you trust them? The first thing that came to mind, it may be obvious, but it was competence. I'm going to follow you because I know that you're able to do whatever it is that you do in your industry and do it well. And you have those skills that allow me to have that faith and trust. Also humility as well. Being humble, but not humble and not have to have that be confused with timid or weak. Some of the most transformational leaders or level 5 leaders in history were immensely humble, but fiercely determined and motivated, and weren't all maybe visually fire and brimstone on the surface, but were fierce in terms of their motivation. And so certainly being humble, having an outward mindset, I agree with both of those. And maybe one last point is being strategic as well, having strategic skills, having vision. I know that leaders that I consider leaders can maybe look at the industry you're in and say, here's where we're at now, but what disruptors will change our industry that will make it so our industry looks different 5 years from now, and how can we course correct today so that 5 years from now, we are in a place where we don't have to do a hard pivot and either go out of business or lose a lot of business. And so it's having that strategic mind and always thinking in the future what's best for your group or company.
Perfect. So you've all been leaders in your own different ways, and you've all been successful, regardless of how young. And you say you're old, but that is so not true. So what were some important steps that you guys took to have success early on in your careers? And what advice would you give to the people in the audience, the people at this school who are, if not about to be in that step, already are? So advice and kind of steps that you guys took.
The best advice I received, I was writing a paper for a business class actually at Utah State, and I interviewed one of my bosses at the time. He was a retired vice president from Utah State University, had left, and now was the marketing director at Logan Regional Hospital at the time. And I was interviewing him for a class for a paper, and I asked him a similar question. And he said, nobody gets lucky. A lot of people look at people who are in great positions, have great job opportunities, and think, gosh, they're so lucky. I wish I could have a stroke of luck like that. Nobody gets lucky. Luck happens when preparation and opportunity collide. And so I've kept that in the back of my mind for the last 15 years since I had that conversation with him, and thought, I've always just tried to be prepared for whatever opportunity. And when I was just finishing college and was just starting to look for career opportunities, I didn't say no to very many opportunities, even when they seemed pretty piddly or didn't seem like very good. I took advantage of every networking thing I could go to. Now I publish magazines. I spent days delivering magazines. Don't go in feeling a little bit, well, I have an MBA now. I better get a six-figure income, right? Think about, just take opportunities and take the time to network, and don't feel like maybe you're above certain things, and things will kind of fall into place, I feel like.
Just to kind of go off of that, people don't care what you know if they don't like you. So make sure that you are friendly and that you're kind to hear. But for me, so some of the best advice I heard, and I actually continually hear it because one of the biggest motivators in my life is my wife. And it actually is probably what got me here to where I'm at now. And that's get comfortable with the uncomfortable. Nothing remarkable happens in your comfort zone. So I'm your typical introvert. If I had the option between going to a networking event and meeting people or staying home and just reading a book, I would have preferred the reading the book thing. But I knew nothing in my life was going to change unless I got out and I did something that made me uncomfortable. And that's really how I got to where I'm at now. Going across the country to find a company that I wanted to work for was uncomfortable for me. Being told that, hey, just apply online. For those of you that have gone to job fairs and have met with employers and they tell you to just go ahead and apply online, they're basically saying, good luck, we don't have anything for you. I applied online. I nailed the interviews that I had. I went across the country again to Minnesota to work for this massive company. And I was just this small cog. And as I was working there, I started to get comfortable again. And then my wife would say, you need to step out of your comfort zone. So I started to do things that I didn't normally do naturally. Started networking more. You would not believe the importance of networking. It opens all of the doors that you want open. But you have to just get out there and you have to open your voice, you open your mouth, you have to talk to people, you have to let them know what you want. I would say that is some of the biggest influencers on why I'm where I'm at today. And building on the networking, the job that I currently have was not a job that I applied for. I got a call one morning, early October, and they said, hey, we have a position that's opened in Utah, and we want you to apply for it. We want you to come and come to Utah. And at the time, that was not in the plan at all. I was planning on being in Minnesota for years. And now we're here because of somebody that I had networked with the first time I started working at 3M. So,
I think any advice I would give is, on top of the terrific advice you've already heard, is to take advantage of the resources that are here first. And if you're here as a student, your tremendous faculty and staff here at Utah State University, that's one of the things that I did when I was in your position. I would seek out mentor figures. I'm not saying go find a mentor. That would help a lot. Sometimes it's just hard to wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to find a mentor today. But I'm thinking of one scenario in particular. It was a man named Bud Scruggs. He's a great guy. He was actually president, I think, of the Huntsman Financial Corporation, and I got to meet him initially through an event where students at Utah State University would go and explore kind of Huntsman Corporation, and he was kind of leading us. And I reached out to a resource here to say, hey, could I have his email and just shoot him an email? I'd love to just talk with him. And through to a resource here, they're like, yeah, here's his email. Email him. Something like that you could probably do. The people who are certainly much more qualified than me, so if you want to talk to Brock or Emily and get real good advice after this, you could probably do that and connect with them or anyone else who comes here on your Fridays, and they'd probably love to talk to you and give you advice. I remember one thing Bud told me is, and I'll never forget it, he said, I was considering options, like here's an option for a new kind of startup company. I have some offers for maybe more established positions. And he said, Kaden, your time is never going to be as cheap as it is right now. And that means, if you want to do something that's more risky, I'm generally risk averse, but if you want to do something that's risky, now's the time. And each day or year that goes by, it's just going to get a little harder. And that essentially made me think, this is the time to do it. And I'm grateful that I did. And it may be a different answer for you, or it may be a different piece of advice, but take advantage of your resources here. Also, another piece of advice I would say is try and spend as much time as possible or associate with people who are successful and positive. Now, the definition of success, maybe that's up to you. Whatever you put value in terms of success, whether they're just rich, whether they're creative, I guess that's your prerogative. But spend time with successful and positive people. And the likelihood that maybe you are successful or more positive, it may rub off on you. There's a proverb that I like a lot. It's an old proverb. It says, walk with the wise and become wise. And I truly believe that. So spend time with people who are successful. Learn from them. And if you're more like, I don't even know where to start, how can I just find someone who's successful? Take a historical figure, or take someone who you don't know who's still living, who's massively successful. And if you can't even think of anyone on that, I'll suggest one, John Huntsman. Try and study the life of John Huntsman. Read the book Winners Never Cheat, and you'll learn a lot about a man who was very humble, fiercely determined, hardworking, had unflinching integrity and ethical leadership, and learn from him. And then make your way to people you can meet and interact with every day, and walk with the wise and become wise.
So I want to hurry and piggyback off of something that Kaden said. So I didn't have the luxury of doing my undergrad here at the Huntsman School, but I did do my graduate studies here. And going off of take advantage of the resources that you have, the faculty and the administration here truly care about your success, and they want you to be successful. Now, as a student, I didn't feel that as much. So I want you to understand that I didn't feel that as much as a student, but as I look back and see everything that they did for us, everything that they provided for us, the opportunities that they gave us, take advantage of those, because that will help give you that springboard into your future, into your next career. People love talking to students. Like, if there's an industry that you want to work for, find somebody in that industry that you can talk to. If there's a company you want to work for, find somebody that you want to talk to. As a student, you have an in, and it's really easy, or it's a lot easier to get into a company to talk to somebody as a student than it is as somebody that as just a regular old Joe that's trying to get a job. Finding out what you can from people, doing informational interviews, taking advantage of the network that you have, use it. Because once you leave here, there aren't as many resources for you. So take advantage of the ones that you have when you're here.
Perfect. I love that everything you guys said had to do with what you learned or what you were constantly trying to learn from other people. It was nothing that you personally did or that you thought that you were above anybody else. It was always about how you were constantly learning. So thank you. We have a few minutes, and I want to give time to the audience if you guys have any questions for these guys. I know last time they passed around a mic. Is that a possibility? So if you have a question, raise your hand, and these guys are happy to answer.
Way to take advantage of the resources given to you.
Good job.
I appreciate it. My name's Jordan, so I'm studying business admin and HR. I'm an undergrad. I'm in a business ethics class right now, so I'm curious about maybe either a recent ethical dilemma or an ethical dilemma you faced as you first entered the career field upon graduation, kind of how you handled that, and then any advice you might have to us.
Great question. They're stumped, but they're coming.
Gordon, I can take a stab at that. Our company is involved with a group in a foreign territory. It's actually an online school. And this is a relatively new school down there. And essentially, what's sometimes accepted in that culture is through the process of accreditation, kind of skipping certain important steps that would essentially determine this school as legitimate. And unfortunately, there are several schools that are founded in this area that can go down there and essentially get the title of university, but the degrees aren't worth the paper they're printed on. And we've actually partnered with a school to be a content provider for that school, it would have actually been very, very easy, and I'm thinking very financially beneficial for us to pursue that route, because unfortunately, you can actually go there and make a lot of money and take advantage of that. However, we insisted upon going through that accreditation process with that school, which is timely, which is expensive, and doesn't pay off immediately. However, what it does is it brings you that legitimacy at the end. And it was, to be honest, not really a decision that we ever considered, should we or should we not. There are areas that are more gray, but for us, in the moment, we knew, what kind of company are we? What core values do we have? And those are decisions that you have to make. It's not, may not be as easy as make a buck or sleep at night. You can definitely do both, but it speaks to maybe the perspective. I could speak to the value beyond just the dollar signs of us of this school having accreditation, and it has to do with just educating people in the area, which goes back to our core values. In the book, The Outward Mindset, I think that's what you were referring to from the Arbiter Institute, there's a case example of a group that says, our goal is to try and measure the amount of gallons we're sending to this area in Africa. I don't know if you remember this specific part of the book. And they were measuring their success by gallons sent over to the area. But they actually found, the more research they did, is when people got the water, it would allow their kids to go to school. So they revised what they were measuring in terms of success. Instead of gallons shipped to this country in Africa, it was kids sent off to school, because it was more in line with what their core values are. And if those core values are strong and unwavering, like you read in Winners Never Cheat, then these ethical decisions become formality. You know exactly what to do and you know how to act. But I would read Winners Never Cheat, because John Huntsman talks about that in many different scenarios, and he gives great examples.
One of the points of pride that 3M has is that they're continually on the list for world's most ethical companies, and they have a very strict code of conduct policy, and they focus on that. And they've actually self-reported a lot of issues that they've come across doing internal investigations and stuff like that. For me, one of the things that I actually encountered in regards to ethical dilemmas was when we were redesigning this supervisor development program, meeting with stakeholders from other countries, we learned that copyright laws and intellectual property laws were a little bit looser there. And so people would be using content that they weren't paying for in order to develop the employees. So that was one of the things that we basically put a stop to, because it isn't ethical, and it didn't align with our company values and how we wanted to operate. And so identifying that and then putting an end to it was one of those things that we've done just recently. But
I just have something to add a little bit from a different perspective. Is my business is a small business. We deal with other small business owners. So any penny someone spends or in our company is a dollar they're not spending on their kids' dance lessons or taking their family out to dinner. It's very real out of their own pockets for most of the businesses that I work with. And so for me, ethically, it comes right down to me. People are trusting me to make good use of their money and to get their advertisement or their investment into the right hands of people that that they're hoping to get the return on their investment. So I think it comes right down to, at the corporate level or right down to you as an individual acting ethically and being trustworthy.
Great question. Anybody else in the back? Hadley, then Amanda.
We'll go right here, actually.
Oh, Amanda first.
Hi, I'm Amanda Cookby. I'm in the MBA program. And I'm just curious what was the most valuable thing you gained from your time here during the MBA program?
She's sitting 4 rows back from the front, writing in her notebook right now. Spending time with Maren was actually one of the most valuable things that I took away because she pushed us to do what I was saying earlier, reach out to companies that you want to work for, find people that you could just talk with. And then it was also just learning how to work with a really diverse team of people that have different perspectives and being able to manage some strong personalities. We had a lot of those in our MBA program. But in the end, we were able to come together as a team to overcome whatever obstacle it was that we had or the challenges that we had. So use Maren. She's great. Plug.
Amanda, I would say unquestionably, and in the vein of what he said, what Brock said, your resources here, unquestionably for me, it was the faculty that are here. And not only the faculty who are so wonderful and dynamic, but the programs. It was actually here that I discovered a real love of travel. I know even when I was going to school here, the programs of travel were just amazing. In fact, the story that kind of got me into it, I was taking an economics class with a professor named Chris Fossen, who is Chris still up here?
Yes.
He's amazing, and I love him so much. But I failed horribly this econ test. It was a huge bomb. And my move as a student sometimes was to set an appointment with the professors after to show them I was working hard, but I also wanted them to see I was working hard, so maybe they'd give me a break. I don't know if that's bad, but sometimes it worked. Chris was great, though, because we're sitting over this failed econ test, and he's like, Kaden, what do you want to do with your life? He kind of knew my family, so we were friendly. And I was like, I just came home from an LDS mission in Europe. I was like, I like travel. Travel seems cool. And he's like, you should consider this program. And it was the Huntsman Scholars Program where it was just starting and taking everyone because I got into it. And it was that led me to, wow, there are programs here, and I'm sure they've even grown since I've left. But when I was here, you go to Asia for a summer. You could go to Europe for the fall. You could go to Africa for a summer. You could go back to Europe for an internship. And I did all those things. And I was shocked and surprised at the number of people who either didn't know about it, or B, just didn't take advantage of it. And so consider travel if you haven't. Amanda, I would give that plug. And even when I was out traveling with these programs, we'd meet people from universities, and they would be like, wait, this is an undergraduate program that's allowing you to do all this? What school are you from again? And it gives you an incredible perspective. I think it's Mark Twain who's got a tweet, or not a tweet.
You can tweet it, though.
I saw it in a tweet, but he's got a quote that says, travel is like the remedy to all the world's ills. All the prejudice, bigotry, any stereotype, they're all shattered through travel because you're going and gaining a new perspective. You're humanizing people who you maybe just read about. And it can help you in your professional endeavors. And it's probably coming across them a little obsessed. They're passionate about travel, but it can really help you. And your programs here allow you to do that. So take advantage of them.
Great. Emily, you want to add anything to your undergrad? Okay. Hadley, you had a question in the back.
Yeah, so I'm Hadley. I'm a senior in the undergraduate level, but I have a question more for Brock. So you said when you first went into 3M, you were in this huge organization and you felt like you were just a peg in the entire process. For those of us that are also entering big organizations after graduation, what do you recommend to us to be a peg but be a meaningful peg to the organization?
I would say that when you first start, become a sponge. I mean, I know it sounds kind of cliche, but learn as much as you can both about the business, reach out to people, learn what they do, get a genuine interest in people and what they do within the company. Because what you'll find is as you're going around and meeting people, you'll learn more about the company, but people will start learning more about you. And then work hard. Work hard. Nothing is going to be handed to you. And a lot of the times in larger corporations, this may be similar and smaller, but I would imagine it's more larger. It's very political. And so getting to know people, helping them know what you're good at, what you aspire to do, that will get you through that first little while. Kind of like I was saying earlier, when I first started, one of the first people that I got to know was the talent development leader of Latin America. So I would see him every once in a while. We'd talk because I was in charge of the supervisor development program. He was in development, so we'd talk and we'd interact, but we'd talk about all sorts of stuff, not just about work. And 2 years later, he was the one that reached out to me to say, hey, we have this position. We want you to apply for it. And so you never know what's going to happen, but meet people, talk with them, get to know what they're doing. Don't be afraid. You're new. People know that you don't know everything, so take advantage of that. So
I know we're at time, so I want to open it up to you guys if you have any last things you want to say or advice you want to give. Any last things? Unless you've shared all your wisdom.
I don't have time to do that. Just kidding. No, I just say take advantage of the time that you have here. I know those that are in the MBA program, you only have a couple months left, so really take advantage of it. Undergrads, enjoy the journey that you're on. But going back to what Kaden said, take advantage of the opportunities and the stuff that you have here.
Yeah, and to use the school's motto, dare mighty things. It's okay to dream big, aim high, and use the resources to help you get there. It's likely that maybe where you end up isn't where you thought when you were little, thinking I'm going to wake up to be, or I'm going to grow up to be to this. So have an open mind, but be ambitious, and really you can achieve it if you're working hard and having that focus. But use the resources and use probably any one of us or any of these resources here if we can be beneficial to get you to wherever you want to be.
I would just say be memorable. Take the time to make these contacts, network, take advantage of all these resources, and then be memorable. Take in a good way. Make sure people are going to remember you so that you never know when those resources are going to become valuable to you again in the future.
Thank you guys so much for taking time to come up. I know that I personally am honored to get to sit up here and talk with you guys. So let's give them a round of applause. Thank you guys so much.